Your husband's all right, Mrs. Brody. He's fishing. He just caught a couple of stripers. We'll bring him in for dinner. We won't be long. We haven't seen anything yet. Over and out. Way too fast when I listen to that. It was ridiculous. I loved it.
That was good. I mean, nobody thought you were going to go for that as the opening quote, but you absolutely nailed it, bud.
Welcome to Hey Guys Podcast. I'm Rob, that's Liam, and this week we watched Jaws. Released in 1975 and directed by Steven Spielberg, starring Roy Scheider, Robert Shaw, and Richard Dreyfuss. Amity Island, the kind of place people visit during the summer, is under attack by a man-eating great white shark. Or is it? Nobody seems to believe the local Sheriff Brody of this attack. I mean, apparently the mangled remains of a swimmer could be a boat accident, and nobody has seen the shark. Now, originally that was not by design, but by necessity. Spielberg shows us what can be done when your titular shark is crap, I guess. I mean, it had so many problems with that shark that you only ever see it 2 or 3 times. So we get so much in the way of
suggestion, I guess.
Suggestion, absolutely. Thank you for helping me with my intro because I forgot that. But what we do get is we get an intense look at fighting something unseen until it's too late. Now, I'm not going to go too much in my intro into the brilliance of the film or the impact that it's had over the last 50 years.
Wowzers.
Because we'll talk all about that. But I do want to mention Quint. You just heard my intro. Quint possibly being one of the best characters to hit our screens and prove everything you say can be gold. But Quint, I mean, for the town drunk and loner, that man never stops talking. I wrote it down, dude. I think he just wants a friend.
I think he might. He's one of those guys, like, he's clearly an asshole, but he has that charm where you can imagine he's the kind of asshole that you would want to impress. And you get that a bit between him and Hooper. Like, Hooper hates him, but you can see by the way they actually end up bonding quite quickly, which suggests that he actually wants a friend and Hooper wants to impress him. And it's that, well, it's one of the elements of this film. Of course, on a base level, it's a movie about a shark attacking a small town in Massachusetts. But of course, you read between the lines, you hear all these stories that, I don't know, it's about, post-Watergate paranoid parable. It's a morality tale, especially if you look at the book, because in the book, it's actually, that's proved supposedly by the book, because in the book, Hooper dies because he has an affair with Brody's wife, so you can kill him, if you're playing the morality tale. But in the movie version, he doesn't sleep with the wife, so he's still a hero, so that's why he has to survive, even though it doesn't really make any sense. But really what it is, especially the second half of the movie, it's a story of, failed masculinity, I suppose. And all the insecurities that come with it. It's like he's acting like the big tough guy, very standoffish, but he clearly wants a friend. Hooper's acting like, you're the biggest stick in the world, but I just want to be buddies with you. And it is the element of masculinity where you can be at total odds with someone, you have a couple of drinks, next thing you know, all it takes is somebody says, I can imagine you'd win, you would have been great on that boat with your scar on your fucking knee. You would have, Quint would have fucking loved you, dude.
I don't know.
That house down.
Because I turn around and I'm going, look at the scar, this is where I did, balcony and all that. And then he just turns around and goes, yeah, fuck you, Minneapolis. Now,
but then you're just like, what a story. I mean, the greatest monologue in movie history, maybe.
I do love that they brought that in, though. And it was only brought in, because the Minneapolis, the whole story about the Minneapolis was only released a couple of, weeks before filming. So Spielberg put that in. It
was such a top secret mission.
Yeah. So, and then to just hear it, and I mean, Quint is always smiling, and behind his shit-eating grin, you think, is this guy going to kill me, or is he going to... you don't know if he was going to hit Brody with the baseball bat or hit the radio. You just never know what's going on with Quint. But then when he just takes it serious, he takes his tooth out, and for some reason never puts it back in, just puts it in its case and puts it in his pocket. Okay, fine. And then the tone changes, because they're talking about all this shit, and it's brilliant as well, because it's not like I got this scar by being dragged along 19 blocks, or I got this scar from jumping in front of a bullet. No. I got this scar from arm wrestling. I got this thing from doing this. And they're joking. He's going, my broken heart because of this woman. And all of a sudden you go, yeah, do you know this? SS Minneapolis. And then they just turn around and you can feel the air shift. where they both just
Oh,
go,
absolutely. And
yes,
so much of it is in the performance. And it's clearly, I mean, don't get me wrong, like he gets one of the all-time intros. He's not quite like Omar Sharif in Lawrence of Arabia, but it is incredibly good. And the whole fingernails down the chalkboard shouldn't really
that
work, but he
fucking upset me.
oh, it really upset me. But he then basically disappears. And it really kind of sets up the idea that this is a movie of two halves. And, one of the criticisms of this film is that it's a tad slow. I don't agree with that, especially go back and revisiting it. But the first half is basically all set up, and you get a lot of those kind of quieter moments, which are classic Spielberg, Brody with his wife, Brody with his kid around dinner, the kind of stuff which in a modern movie, it might get rid of those moments, but they're the stuff that elevates this from basically what it should be as a B movie. In the same way that Ridley Scott elevated a B movie with Alien into something special. That's what basically Spielberg did here. On a surface level, as I already mentioned, it's a movie about a shark attacking people. Classic B movie material. But because the characters are so well realized, because the dialogue is so fantastic, because he takes the time to build the world, everything is elevated. So you do need that first half. But I think when people think of this movie, especially if you haven't seen it for a while, what they're really thinking of is that second half. And that is when Quint shows up and the shark actually, you get your first proper glimpse of the shark. And obviously you get a couple of deaths, but for both of them, they show up on the hour mark. It's just the second half of the movie. And from then on, they're on the boat, and that's what people think of the movie. And the reason I think people are so attached to that is largely because of the trio who work in tandem fantastically. But a big part of it is Robert Shaw as Quint, and Spielberg knows it because you see the way he shoots him sometimes. It's like a character from myth and history. Like he shoots him with his back to the sun. So you can only see his outline, like this great character. So clearly they were just like, fuck, we've got gold here. And
Spielberg was keeping his distance. That's all he was doing, because every time Shaw walked on set, he was probably drunk as fuck. And he thought, you know what? Let's just let this guy do it, and we do, because he will probably hit us. I love what you said then, right, about first and second half, because it's so funny. Well, it's just really interesting. The first half, it's so busy. There's people everywhere. And from the beginning, from the opening scene with the beach party to the first report of her missing and all, there's more than 4 or 5 people on screen all the time. There's always somebody on screen.
It actually reminded me a little bit of Uncut Gems in that regard, where you really shoot it in that way, where you, even if there's not a lot actually happening, but the scenes, like you say, they feel busy, and you can feel the pressure that Brody's under, because they're just like, you've got all these voices and all this stuff going on in what should be this idyllic town, and you're just like, my God, this guy's gonna have a fucking heart attack soon.
And spot on, because there's never just one person talking to Brody. There's so many people talking to him. The mayor pulled up with his entourage and started going off about him and saying it's a boat attack. And then that goes by the by. And then they're in the beach then, and he's trying to concentrate on the water, and everyone's talking to him about being an islander, or I need you to fix this problem. And then that little kid gets taken. The whole thing. And then you go to the town hall meeting. Everyone's talking to him again. You've got to sort this. Everyone's constantly, there's about 3 or 4 voices constantly all the time on screen.
Tension to every sequence.
Oh, that's right, and it's brilliant. But then, sorry, I said it's brilliant. But then you get to the second half, and it's Skeleton Crew, and it's just so quiet, and it's just so. And then it's just 3 guys, and even though Brody is typically on land, would probably be the alpha male. He's the sheriff. He's the one with the gun. He's used as the grunt in this. It's the grunt work. You're the one doing the chum. Because you don't know what's going on out in here. I mean, I don't like Hooper, but Hooper knows boats. Hooper knows this. So I kind of respect Hooper a little bit. And Hooper, I know you said Hooper didn't like Quint, but I think from the moment Hooper meets Quint, Hooper's laughing. It might be a nervous laugh, but he's like, this guy's fucking brilliant. I love this guy.
That's the thing, though, it's that immediate love-hate relationship. And, it links into the whole idea of masculinity, where he both hates him, but clearly, and I'm not sure if women have the same kind of thing, but it goes back to primary school when you're kids and stuff. There'll be this tough kid who will drive you crazy, but you will want to impress them. And there is an element of that, of him being like the old sea dog, where he wants to justify his existence as well, because he knows, he has that moment early in the film about the whole working class thing. It's like, oh, look, the rich kid comes in. And he clearly has a bit of a chip on his shoulder. But that is the great thing about this movie. So many of those things are kind of hinted at without ramming it down your throat. And that's what makes it a great adaptation. I mean, I've never actually read the book by Peter Benchley, which was only written a year before. It was 1974. It's, from everything I've read up on it, not read the book, obviously, it's not a fantastic novel. And one of the biggest issues with it is that the characters aren't likable. And that's something that Spielberg wanted to change specifically. And I think he did that very successfully, because even Quint, who's an asshole, you kind of like him by the end. But the thing I found quite interesting, I'm unsure if you would have picked up on this as well, seeing that you're a fan as much as I am, is how much this movie feels like a Stephen King novel. Now, I'm not just saying that because of the setting. So it's set at Martha's, Amity Island is actually Martha's Vineyard, which is an island in Massachusetts. I know that's not exactly Maine, but it's all part of New England. And I've been up to Maine, I've been to New Hampshire. They all look like Amity. They all have that same vibe. It's all full of old white people. Like, it's just every one of these little beach towns. And it's not just the setting, the vibe, especially the first half, has that elongated setup, which feels like a Stephen King novel, because we all know he has kind of, he just can't stop writing, essentially. But the one that really ticked all the boxes for me was Mayor Vaughn, who felt like such a quintessential Stephen King character. He reminded me quite a bit of James Big Jim Rennie from Under the Dome. I'm not sure if you've read.
Yeah, I know Big Jim. Yeah, I've read Under the Dome. Yeah.
He has that kind of vibe. Like, he's such a low key shithouse, and he has all his cronies with him. Like you said earlier, like, he's got one of his friends to say, "Oh, it was probably a propeller." Like, he knows it's not a propeller, but he's leaned on him. He's like, we need our big summer and stuff like that. And it was never something that clicked with me before, but watching it this time, I was like, fuck me, this feels like a Stephen King adaptation. It's unbelievable.
Oh, I had Stephen King vibes, absolutely. And especially the mayor is really interesting, because I'm with you on Big Jim, but I kind of felt like it was like Mrs. Carmody, a comedy from The Mist. Take the religious side of it, the political side instead. But it's that kind of thing. As soon as this guy speaks, you are going to find the people who are going to listen, and they're not the people you want to listen. And that was the key. I mean, it goes down to the what they call medical examiner, the ME.
Yeah.
He's like, you told me it was a shark. I'm doing all this because you told me a shark. Well, it could have been, but now I've spoken to the mayor.
He's such a slime boy. You see him all standing next to him, just kind of parroting what he says. But, and the other part of, I guess, the whole Stephen King thing is, and it's unbelievable that this came out, and it's almost kind of, this movie is in such rarefied air that it's just seen almost as a Spielberg movie, or it's just seen as Jaws.
Yeah.
But if you break it down, and I've talked about the kind of dialogue and the storytelling, elevating the material, but structurally, what this is unquestionably is a fucking horror movie. It's crazy that this is considered like the quintessential, or certainly the first tentpole summer blockbuster. And it's a horror movie. And the fact that this was a PG and kids got to see it in cinema.
Was it a PG back then? That's what I wanted to ask.
Yeah, it was
we know ratings. It was a PG back then as well.
So basically, it was just some small children might find elements kind of threatening. But basically, if you went back to a cinema in 1975 in America, wherever, it was just full of kids seeing this film. And, you have the opening sequence. The first thing you see is tits and a woman getting fucking mauled to death by a shark. And I know you do actually see a lot of blood. You don't see the shark and you don't see the bites. Although, if you have any doubt as to whether this is a horror, it arguably has the most famous jump scare of all time, when Hooper goes down to the boat, which was famously shot after the movie, after the test screenings, when Spielberg was like, I think I can get one more scare out of people. And he shot it in his friend's pool with his own money.
Yeah, he paid, I think it was 10 grand for that.
Of his own cash. And the other one is, like, it arguably has one of the greatest or most memorable death sequences of all time. And this is supposed to be a summer blockbuster. It's absolutely insane that just over the years, it seems to have just stealth got its way through. So I was, that's just a summer blockbuster. It's like, no, this is a fucking horror movie.
It's funny, the cultural impact that this film has had as well, mind. As soon as the film starts, you get, and to be fair, that's the only time you get it. The dun like the Jaws theme, obviously, but you don't get it through the rest of the film. It's literally at the beginning.
You get a couple of times later on when the shark's attacking the boat.
I don't remember hearing it.
It comes in very briefly. You don't get the full thing, but there's a few times especially when they're doing like a first person thing, but it's most prominent at the start without question.
Yeah. But then what I mean by cultural impact is I could turn around now to Riley, to my son, and do that noise, do that and he knows that something's going to attack him. It's like
and like you say, this is from a film from 1975, and that one of the questions I've got here actually to your point is this? I'm not saying the best, but is this the most memorable score? And I'm talking about the main theme specifically, because the score is actually a lot more layered than I remember. Like, especially the stuff on the boat, I think to add a bit of levity later on, it almost goes a little bit Errol Flynn in Robin Hood style, where it's like a real sense of adventure before they bring it back down and go, okay, this is a horror theme again. But the main theme itself, I was like, I don't think there's a more famous theme in like, you can say Star Wars, basically it's Williams versus Williams, isn't it?
Yeah.
But if you say Star Wars, some people will start to accidentally hum Indiana Jones, some people will accidentally start to hum Superman. If you say Jaws, you are getting a 100% accurate feedback of Burnham, bum bum bum. But you just, like, everyone fucking knows it. It's crazy.
People who haven't seen the film, like you just said, it's absolutely ridiculous. It's such this entire film, and I love what you said about it being a horror, right?
Yeah.
Because, I mean, you have your unseen assailant. You have your...
wonderfully unseen.
Yeah. Horror, I don't know, villain or whatever you want to call it. Your monster.
I think it's fair to call it a villain. Like, he's compared it himself to an almost kind of partner piece to a Duel. You know, another movie where you have this unseen assailant. Sure, you can see the vehicle, and it reminds me a little bit of like Jeepers Creepers. What Jeepers Creepers is at its best in the first half, before you see the monster, where you just have this unseen assailant just constantly and relentlessly chasing you. And and that's the thing. Most of these films, they're never as good when you see what's chasing you. Look, this film gets away with it at the end, but it leaves it very late before you get a proper good shot.
Because it's brilliant. Like you said, all you got with like that poor kid, I can't remember his name, was it Davy or whatever, when he gets dragged under the water.
Yeah, you have to have a chat about him. Not Alex
Kintner. So he gets dragged under the water. Again, you don't see anything. You don't see when that guy is on the boat in the pond or wherever they call it when the shark attacks again, when Jaws attacks. And even when like they're just doing things on the boat and he nudges up first, and like that really quick opening, you're going to need a bigger boat thing, where Roy Scheider just looks over and you just quickly glimpse this massive thing, and then it goes under the water.
Well,
and
that's
only
what the
then
ride is based on.
Yeah, but then only I haven't been to Universal. I'm not too sure.
But... dude, it literally jumped out right next to me, and it looks like that. It's just a brief thing. It pops its head out. You're like, fuck, awesome, and it's just gone again. Amazing.
And then you see it in all its glory when it takes Quint down, and then
that's the big moment.
Did you get the foreshadowing as well? I didn't. I've never noticed it before. The oxygen tank shoved in, and I know we're going straight to the end. The oxygen tank shoved in its mouth, and you got Brody going, "Let me see it, let me see it, let me see it." The book that he's reading right at the beginning of the film shows a shark with an oxygen tank in their mouth.
Does it really?
Yeah.
Oh, I did not spot that at all. That's a great shout. That's we'll deal with that more, properly in a moment. But that last sequence comes abruptly, and it is absolutely fantastic. But we mentioned like the music being like, I think when I think of Jaws, and I think the reason is it almost gets away with being a horror movie without people maybe accepting it or understanding it as a horror film, is that it's just seen as like the quintessential movie more than anything else. And it was actually described by Tarantino as the best movie of all time. But he qualified that by saying not the best film, the best movie. And I know that's a slightly douchey thing to say, but I actually agree with that kind of concept, that you have movies, like popcorn movies, and then you have films. He's not necessarily saying Jaws is better than, I don't know, Lawrence of Arabia, which you consider a film. This is a movie, and it is one of the best. And if you have any doubts of that, this is one movie you could make. I'm not saying it's the best in any of these categories, but you could make an argument that this movie has the best monologue of all time. It has one of the best jump scares. It has one of the best deaths. It has maybe 2 or 3 of the best, most memorable quotes. It's got one of the best main themes, and it's got one of the best posters of all time. Like, and I'm not saying definitively that it is top of the list for all those, but you could make an argument for it in any one of those categories. And that's not even talking about Quint as being one of the most memorable characters in modern movie history, modern-ish movie history. Like you said, this film's almost 50 years old back, but. This film,
the one thing I
enjoyed it growing up, but rewatching it now, and this is going to step, in terms of the ratings and stuff, I was like, oh, this film really is a masterpiece. It really is.
To be fair, same thing. I watched it when I grew up, didn't really think much of it. You watch it now older, where you can appreciate it more. Yeah. To be fair,
I think I always liked it. I always
no,
liked
yeah,
it.
I
But
always liked
watching it
it.
this
But
time, I was just like, I think I love this movie.
I think we're going to be surprised. I'm not going to be surprised by our scores, if I'm
I don't
totally
think
honest.
so.
You miss one out when you said it's got the greatest this, it's got the
Mhm.
greatest that. It's got the greatest singing voice in the world. I mean, fucking Quint, farewell and adieu to my
Yeah,
fair
he's got to learn
Spanish
more than one.
ladies.
He's got to learn more than one song. I mean, the thing is,
Although,
sorry.
sorry, yeah, learn more than one song, but his limerick was fucking great as well. Here lies the body of Mary Lee, died at the age of 103. For 15 years, she kept her virginity. Not a bad record for this vicinity.
It's
You
good
know,
stuff.
dude.
Like everything he delivers is gold. And I wonder if is it the dialogue or is it just Shaw? And like you said,
I honestly don't
the
think
fact
they're
that
lines.
Shaw, it was like he was pissed. Like, he famously liked to drink. So he would show up and he'd be half cut. But, he's got a touch of, he never hit the same heights, despite the fact coming into this film, he was coming off The Sting, which he was fantastic in. He wasn't quite Marlon Brando, but he did have a hint of that having something special about him. And you would almost put up with his foibles just because you're like, if you get that magic Robert Shaw performance like he does in this film, it elevates it. And like Hooper and Brody, Scheider and Jesus Christ, what's his name? Dreyfuss are both fantastic.
Yeah,
but once he shows up on screen, he sucks all the fucking oxygen out of the room.
They're great together. They have such a great impact together. Like their chemistry is absolutely fantastic. But then when you get Quint into the mix, all of a sudden then they're just bouncing off him, and the three of them, they're absolutely great. But what you just said then, I honestly don't think he had any lines. Like you said, I think they just wound him up, put some cocaine in his coffee, and just let him go.
Well, supposedly there is something to that because famously, they went over budget. They went over, it was supposed to be a 55-day shoot, or no, I think it was less than that, and it ended up going to 55 days. But they were rewriting a lot of it because, the guy wrote the book. He actually wrote the screenplay as well, Peter Benchley, and they were constantly going back, and he had other screenwriters working on it, and they were changing the dialogue in the evening over dinner, and then, obviously shooting it the next day. But if you want to know how good the famous USS Minneapolis monologue is, people still argue today over who actually wrote it. Everybody wants that action. And a lot of people say Robert Shaw had a massive role in it because he wasn't just a fantastic actor; he was a playwright as well. So how much of it was he ad-libbing? How much was he actually involved in the writing? So this film was similar to like Titanic. And I know you're not the biggest fan of Titanic, but remember all the buzz. It was like, the internet was just trying to get going. And everyone's like, this movie is going, I don't think it's any coincidence that it was being shot out on Sea Times and stuff like that. So maybe people just weren't quite aware of it. But it was talked about as being this massive disaster of a movie. And it was the same with Jaws. People were talking about halfway through production, it's like, it's running over time, it's running over budget. This, this new director, all he's directed is this TV movie Jewel, and he's just done Sugarland Express. And now he's been given the keys to the kingdom and he's fucking shit in the bed. And that was the kind of view from Hollywood. And it wasn't until they actually went to advanced screenings and they were saying like, oh, no. He's nailed it. He's fucking nailed it. And they nobody knew that this wasn't one of those like preordained films where it's like, oh, Spielberg's the man. This film's going to be the shit. Halfway through, everyone's like, this film's going to be a bomb. And it would, and we mentioned earlier about the idea that this was the original summer tentpole movie. And of course, a lot of people will go back and rewatch it and be like, it feels slower. It doesn't have all the hallmarks of a contemporary blockbuster, summer blockbuster. When people think of that, they think of 2 years later, they think of Star Wars. But the reality wasn't just the film itself. The reason it's considered that is because of the way it was sold in the summer. A lot of it was down to the marketing. It was marketed like a modern blockbuster. And instead of, back in the 70s, the summer was where movies went to die. It was like Christmas was the time. They're like, well, people will want to play outside. But of course, it was actually the rise of malls, which made this movie work because suddenly kids will go into malls.
I thought this was released on December 26th.
No, it's a summer movie. It's the summer movie.
No, it's a blockbuster, but I don't think it's a summer movie.
Oh, it's 100%. It was one of the first movies released in the summer. That's its claim to fame. Like they never used to do that, but he famously said it was like he wanted it to release in a time when people were potentially going into the water.
Release date December 26, 1975.
That must be somewhere else. It was definitely released in the summer, 100%. Spielberg even said about it. He said he wanted it to be released at a time.
Hang on.
And the whole idea was that kids were suddenly going to a mall.
UK. It's not a summer blockbuster for us. It's a Christmas movie for us. Do you know you mentioned the writing as well?
Hmm.
You meant who wrote it. So Peter Benchley, as you said, was wrote the novel,
Yes.
but he shared the screenplay credit with Carl Gottlieb, who was actually
Yeah. Okay.
he was massive in this film. He was the fucking at the beginning of the film. He was the reporter guy. Everyone
Oh,
get
was he?
together so we can take a picture. Everyone get together. Get out of
Ah,
the shot.
cool.
Only the people that caught the shark. Yeah, that
I,
was
I
the.
honestly, I should have put that together because I remember when I was watching it, I was like, that guy looks like he stands out like a sore thumb. He reminded me a little bit. I was like, almost. I was like, is that Rob Reiner? He had that kind of look about him.
Yeah,
Maybe just directors from the 70s all just look like that. Like, they all had that big beard. They all kind of looked like a skinnier version of Francis Ford Coppola. It's just one of those things. But you mentioned in the intro about one of the reasons this worked, and obviously Spielberg's mentioned this before, the idea that because the shark, Bruce, as they famously called him, didn't really work, it turns it more into a horror film because it is all suggested. This is arguably the ultimate example of necessity being the mother of invention. There's no doubt about it. If Bruce had worked, this film wouldn't have been as good.
oh no,
The reason
it
it's
would have
fantastic is
been
because you
sorry, it would have been B movie schlock if
it
this movie
would have
would have
been.
worked. Yeah.
It would have
Do you
been. It's
know?
the ultimate example of like I always say with movies, and I've said it a bunch of times on this podcast, the best examples in most cases with a movie is show, don't tell. This is actually the complete opposite. It's tell, don't show. And I mean, it's lucky that Robert Shaw is doing the telling. But I guess the argument is it kind of specializes in a little showing and then letting your brain fill in the gaps. And it does that, you think of when Hooper's doing not an autopsy, he's checking over the body, and you
Yeah.
just see he picks up the arm, and the rest of it is suggested by his reactions. They do it with the shark the whole time. Even earlier, when he sees the body of the first lady killed, he goes up to the beach and you just see a hand. And it's
Yeah.
more horrifying than if you had seen it yourself. It's just,
I mean, because you could just imagine it in your mind, you can picture in your mind then what's
exactly,
going
and
on.
that's such a classic Spielberg trick. If you go back to Spielberg's oeuvre, all of his films, nobody does reactions better than Spielberg. So many times, rather than showing you what's happening, he'll show you the reaction of the person watching what's happening, and then you're just filling in the gaps. Absolutely fantastic.
Do you know why Bruce didn't work though? Famously, like why he didn't work?
Because his body was made out of like a non-absorbent material or something.
So basically, the salt water had an effect. So, something that was designed
To go in
like
the sea.
to go into the sea into salt water, it didn't like the salt water apparently, which made me laugh quite a bit.
It's unbelievable the fact that like you said, maybe they hadn't thought about it because this was actually the first mainstream movie to ever be shot on the sea, which seems crazy. But all of the films were always shot on a set, and part of it was, I guess, Spielberg being a young director, foolhardy, and being like, no, we have to shoot at sea. But of course, you go back and watch this 50 years later, and you're like, thank fuck they shot this on sea, because if this was a set in 1975, it just wouldn't have had the same impact. And we've talked about it before, like even we did Cliffhanger a few weeks ago. They shoot some of it on location, then you get those close-ups of Sly, and it's clearly, and that film's from like 1993. You can tell it's a set. This works because when they go out to sea, you're like, those fucking guys are out on a boat. Yeah. And it just like a combination of happy accidents and a foolhardy director combined to make one of the most memorable movies of all time, basically.
We've said a lot.
And like I said, a horror movie. Did you notice that the second scene on the beach? I do apologize, just what's in my head. If you have any final doubts as to whether this is a horror, the second scene on the beach is basically Final Destination.
Yeah.
They just keep cutting to people. There's all these red herrings. It's almost like he's having a joke about it, like Final Destination. Oh, is that woman going to get killed? Is the dog going to get killed? Is that a shark? And eventually somebody gets killed. But you're basically just sitting there. There's like 8 different things that can go wrong. And you're guessing which one. It's a Final Destination trick. Crazy. Sorry, I'm going to shut up now for a while.
You've said a lot about Robert Shaw as Quint. I got Richard Dreyfuss as Matt Hooper is fantastic in this.
Brilliant.
Like his initial introduction where they're just talking to him. Where he rocks up and Brody doesn't know it's him is interesting to say the least. And then when Brody gets really excited that it is him, and then they're going along, right, I want to see the shark. We'll only know if this is the real shark that killed him when we cut her open. No, we're not going to cut her open. Trust me, that's the. But then when Hooper rocks up to the house, hi, Mrs. Hooper. Hi, Mrs. Brody. My name is Matt Hooper. Can I talk to your husband? I'd like to talk to him as well. And then he walks in. He goes, I didn't know what to bring, so I brought you red and white. And he just looks at the food at the table and goes, Anyone eating that? And just before he gets an answer, he pulls over Brody's dinner and starts eating. Bro, what an introduction! Who walks into somebody's house and just grabs their food? And then Brody with his full-on fucking, I'm gonna have a pint of wine. Like that whole thing is just fantastic because you don't know what's going on.
Again, though, that's what I mean. It's all just these little moments of characterization where it elevates their relationship. It makes you think you know the character more than the dialogue would suggest. You know, they don't give you a huge amount of backstory on Hooper. You just know that he's got rich parents. But you have all those little moments which just add flavor to that character. And it just means by the time you get to the end of the film and those three people on the boat, and again, it comes back to my whole horror movie thing. The best horror movies only work because you care about the characters. And in this, by the end, Brody, Hooper, Quint, you fucking absolutely care about those characters.
Yeah.
Because, you know, you get people dying earlier in the movie. You don't really care about those because they're just there to get killed. They're just, you know, people swimming on the beach or whatever, you know. And don't get me wrong, they're brutal and memorable. This has one of the most, you know, I would say most memorable introduction sequences, which people probably don't remember as well as they think they do, if that makes sense. Because I was like, everyone remembers the girl being killed by the shark. And then all of a sudden, I was like, I totally forgot about the scene where they're all having a party. I totally forgot that that boy was going to try and fuck her in the sea, but he was so drunk that he fell over.
Asleep.
Like,
oh my God, I wanted him
to
to have a haircut.
Yeah, well, of course, you know, and this is such a 70s movie in so many respects. But, you know, we mentioned a whole bunch of times, the reason this works is it looks like a movie that could have been shot recently, but is set in the 70s rather than one which was just filmed in the 70s. But I love that sequence at the start where he's so drunk that he can't even, like, you think, oh, well, dude, he's about to have sex. Surely he would get into the sea. I can totally imagine being that drunk that you just can't manage to get your clothes off and then you just kind of give up and fall asleep on the edge of the water. But yeah, it's, you know, the intro, everything about it, super memorable. I'm sure I had more of a point there, but I've kind of gone off on stand. I do apologize.
It's all the deaths though. Like Alex Kintner's death, where he's gone back into the sea and he's just on the on that little Lido thing, that bloody what is it, that what are they called?
Inflatable.
Floaty thing. Inflatable. I couldn't think of the word. And why go after him? Of all the people kicking around, why go after that? Is it the yellow thing that's
I think it's the inflatable, because they say if you're on an inflatable, you perhaps maybe look more like a seal, which is like classic, you know, shark chow. But when I think of Alex Kintner, what I really think of is Mrs. Kintner. Now, when I was younger,
before you go into Mrs. Kintner, then, because that's going to go on for a minute, I just want to say, because you just said the inflatable, somebody needs to tell that guy then when they think it's the shark and it turns out to be those two kids with a cardboard fin, somebody needs to tell the guy who knocked those two kids off their inflatable and jumped on it to swim to shore.
What a monster.
What
a twat. I mean, wonderfully captured the panic of it. You can imagine if someone was like a shark's in the water and there was that many people, that's where you would see the worst of people. Like there would be that one asshole who would just push kids off because he'd think he'd have a better chance. Like, oh, it'll catch the kids because they'll be behind me because I'm kind of floating away on their line or whatever. Absolute shithouser of the toppest level. The highest level.
Highest level. Sorry to interject, because I got some stuff to say about Mrs. Kintner as well, so I wanted to put that in before I forgot it. Because oh my God,
Mrs. Kintner. So when I was younger, I had this whole thing. I was like, because when she comes up afterwards, when they think they found the shark,
she's all dressed in black.
She's all dressed in black, and she's got the old dude with her. I was like, is that her father or her husband? Because I thought Miss Kintner was like 65, but I was like, the dude who's walking with her looks like 85. Mrs. Kintner, and played by the actress Elizabeth Lee Fierro, was 45 years old when she filmed this. That is 3 years. The fact that Mrs. Kintner is only 3 years older than me, I find horrifying, because I always thought of her as being like the kid's grandmother or something like that. And I was like, no, it's a mother. Like how? Like I know they age differently in the 70s and all that bullshit, but she looks about 122 years old, and she's supposed to be 40 fucking 5. It's absolutely insane. And we get these every so often when we go back and we watch these films, and we suddenly find out that this fucking dude, this woman's like 3 or 4 years younger than us. Sure, Miss Kintner is still older than me, or as I am now. But my God, it's far too close for my liking.
I go back to Cliffhanger, and I can't even remember his name. But that 37-year-old, 95-year-old man.
It's I always think of like, what is it? Danny Glover in Lethal Weapon. I
Yeah.
appreciate he's playing older, but when he was too old for this shit, I think he was like 39 years old. I'm like, I'm 42, so I'm like 3 years past too old for this shit
Yeah.
now. What the fuck? Or what's his name from Beverly Hills Cop? The partner.
Paul Reiser. Oh no, John Ashton.
John Ashton, yeah.
Yeah.
That is his name, isn't it?
John Ashton, yeah.
Yeah. Like he's like
Yeah.
37 or something. I'm
Fucking
like, dude looks fucking
my
82.
God, yeah, the 80s and like fucking 60s, 70s, and 80s. They had a hard life, didn't they? Jesus
They really did.
Christ.
They really did.
But Mrs. Kintner, the whole thing, it had to have been explained to, like, she went up, she slapped Brody, and that's what put Brody into his funk. Ended up with him drinking a pint of wine. But she's like, I just heard there was another attack and you opened the beach. Why?
Mhm.
And I hate, that's the one thing I hate with films like this. Why didn't he turn around and go, no, no, love, speak to the fucking mayor. I'm the
Yeah, I
one
know.
that had the signs set up. I was going to close the beach. How about you speak to the mayor and ask the mayor why he didn't want to close the beach, why your son got chomped on? And the mayor was the shithousery of the highest order. It was
It really was.
ridiculous.
I like the fact that he kind of had his comeuppance at the end when he suddenly has his moment when he's like, "Oh, my kid was on that beach." I'm like, it's a little bit late in the day to suddenly be worried about it. And I actually think his greatest shithouse moment is actually relatively low key because he kind of wins the day. You have everyone on the beach, and it's like you wanted everyone there to make money for the town, yeah. So everyone's on the beach. The beach is full. People are obviously spending money, but then he insists that they go in the sea. It's like, dude, why do they have to go in the sea? They're at the beach. You're making money. They're like, no, no, no. You must go and please. Like, he goes up to one of his mates and says, not only you, take your wife and your kids and go into the sea.
He sent his friend into the water, and out of, I don't know, some sort of obligation, his wife decides to follow him, and they both go, you know what? Let's get the chum. Let's get the two little kids to go in with us. No, if somebody's making me go in the water, I'm leaving my 5-year-old on the fucking beach. Don't go in the water, mate, just in case.
Absolute shocker. Is that the sequence where you get the famous dolly zoom? Now, I know there were dolly zooms before this, and, many, I think, again, Spielberg's even said that because they had to basically pare down the whole Bruce the Shark thing, and they had to suggest it rather than show it, that it makes the film actually feel more Hitchcockian. And I'm sure it is a nod to Hitchcock with the famous dolly zoom of Rob Schneider. What? Is that Roy Schneider?
Roy Schneider.
I do apologize. Brody, obviously, and it kind of crashes in his face. But I was like, again, I didn't even mention that earlier. Like, that's one of the more famous shots in movie history you could make an argument for. Speaking of famous, I mean, we did mention it earlier. So you never actually went on the Jaws ride, did you?
No, I've never been to Universal. I've never been to America.
I was lucky that I was like, basically, it was the last year that I was at Universal. The only place you can go on a Jaws ride now is Universal Japan. It's completely gone from America. And it was the last summer that it was at Universal was when I went, like, I'm 12. It must have been like 2012 or something like that. And the guy obviously giving the performance, because, there's someone on the boat was like, oh, this is the last summer. I'm going to go out of my mind. So he gave this like really eccentric performance. But like the shark came out on the water and stuff. And I was so happy I got to see that. And it's such a shame that they removed it because Universal have just got rid of all those classic rides. Like I remember when I went there, and I'm not sure if it's the same for you growing up, but I always wanted to go on the Back to the Future ride. And of course, the year before I went, they replaced it with The Simpsons. Don't get me wrong, The Simpsons ride was still dope, but it was like, man, I want to go the Back to the Future ride. And then there was an Aliens ride, and they fucking replaced it with an absolutely dog shit Men in Black ride. So I was happy that I at least got to go on the Jaws ride, and Bruce the Shark did jump up right next to me. Don't get me wrong, it was even a bit quaint in 2012, but I was surprised to hear that the only place you can see that ride now is in Japan, which is a bit of a shame, but one of those things.
My only knowledge of the Jaws ride is Mallrats. I was going to propose just as Jaws pops out of the water.
Yeah.
That's all I can think of. Did you know, we go back to Mrs. Kintner. Did you know she came back?
For the sequel?
To the film. Not for the sequel, for the threequel. For Jaws 3, The Revenge. 3D. Yeah. Was it The Revenge? Was that what it's called? Jaws the Revenge?
No, Jaws the Revenge is the fourth one. So there's Jaws 2, Jaws 3D, and then Jaws 4, The Revenge.
I thought Jaws the Revenge was the one that had Michael Caine. I did have Michael Caine, sorry, yeah. And Mario Van Peebles. Oh, Jaws 3D was the one that had Dennis Quaid in it, wasn't it?
Yeah. Well, and that was the one which had the aquarium and stuff, wasn't it? That's the scene I always remember.
They were in the aquarium. The only one I remember from Jaws the Revenge is the fact that they've turned around and said, "Oh no, like this guy's on a mission to kill us."
Mhm.
Like Jaws actually, like this fish knows
Yeah,
us, can actually pick us out of a crowd. Is here to attack
it's
my
so
family.
bad. Well, this was a classic case of diminishing returns. So obviously, Jaws is something of a masterpiece. Jaws 2, if it wasn't for the fact that it was a follow-up to Jaws, it wasn't actually a bad movie. And Roy Schneider came back as Brody for that one,
Didn't want to, contractually obligated.
contractually obligated. But Jaws 2 isn't actually a terrible movie. It's just not any. It's nowhere near as good as the first one, obviously.
So I don't
But
think I've
judged on its
seen
own
it.
merits,
I
it's
don't.
like I haven't seen it for a long time, but I remember it being fine. Jaws
I've seen
3.
Michael Caine. I've seen Dennis Quaid, but I don't because who was what is his name? He's recently passed away as well. Fucking was in Enemy Mine with Dennis Quaid.
Oh yeah, yeah. Oh God, I can't remember. All I'm seeing now is the face from Enemy Mine. Quite the face in Enemy Mine. Jesus Christ, a movie we really
Oh
should
my!
cover on this. But I mean, while you
I've
look that
wanted to
up,
do Enemy Mine for so long, but there's not. I don't know. I'm afraid there's not much to talk about. Two people on a planet just looking at each other for an hour and
I
a
think
half.
we could just talk about the prosthetics for a
Oh,
good 35 minutes, to be honest.
Louis Gossett Jr.
Oh yeah, yeah, good job, good
Yeah,
job. But well, I like Jaws 2 is fine. Jaws 3 is bad, but it's just bad. And then Jaws for the Revenge is really, really fucking bad. So they do eventually just get more. They do just get more and more terrible as they go. But yeah, I think Jaws for the Revenge is more famous now from Michael Caine's interview in which he was asked about it and said, "Oh, I love that film because it got to buy my mum a house." Like,
yeah.
he's just like, yeah, I just made the film. They paid me loads of money. So it's absolutely fine. It was like, what's his name coming back as Lex Luthor for like Superman 4. It's like, yeah, sometimes actors just come back for a payday, It's just
I
one of
was
those things.
I've recently been listening to the Danny Trejo, and this is going on a tangent. The Danny Trejo autobiography, and he narrated it himself, and he said,
Mhm.
"I follow the Michael Caine school of acting, where I will take anything that's offered to me for a job to pay for a house or this or
Mhm.
that." I said, "Yeah, but like I didn't say to Danny, obviously, I don't talk to him, but my God, that guy will just accept every job."
Mhm.
Like at
Mhm.
least Michael Caine's turned a couple down, I'm assuming. But bless Danny Trejo, man. Fucking
Well, I
hell.
think I think the classic thing is, it's different with Danny Trejo because he was never, there was that minor push when it's like Machete in space and all that jazz, but he always knew he was a supporting character, and he was just like, all right, I'm probably not going to lead my own movie, so I'm just going to take the paychecks. But even like when you get people like Michael Caine, they're like, they have highs and lows throughout their career, and he's just like, listen, sometimes you just got to be a jobbing actor, and even when things are going well, it is the classic one for us, one for me. Yeah, I'll
Yeah.
do my artsy thing, but I've got to get paid as well. And it's just like, yeah, and Nicolas Cage, whether it's because he has financial problems or the simple fact that some actors just like to work and they're just like, yeah, I just want to go on set. I want to do these jobs. It is what it is. And, they're not all like you'll get some actors who are in rarefied enough air that they get to pick their roles and they're very protective of them. Michael Caine probably could have been that and been very wealthy, but he decided, no, I'm going to get paid. I'm going to keep working regardless. Not every movie is going to be a classic, and on with my life, I suppose. And I absolutely respect that. If he wants to be in
Wait,
George 4 and get fucking paid loads of money, cool. Why the fuck
what
not?
was Jaws 2 where they electrocute the shark?
I think so. I remember there was like a couple of good deaths. I've seen Jaws 2 once, and I just remember it
Okay.
being like, this is okay. This
That's
is
the one
fine.
I'm sure because I can't remember Michael Dennis Quaid doing it or Michael Caine. I'm sure
No,
that's
I
the
don't
one
think
where
they
he
did.
jams an oar onto like an underwater cable or something and the shark bites
But
it.
that is the thing.
Yeah.
I am concerned that I don't want to just say yes because I feel like elements of those films have blurred into one another because I've seen them all once, and I just remember having those reactions. And I did check up to see if, like, the kind of critical consensus aligned with my own memories, and it seems to be. I think it was like this is like 80-90%. Jaws 2 is at like 56% approval. Then you drop down to like 30 for Jaws 3D. And then you drop down to like 12 for Jaws for the Revenge. Like I said, all I remember about Jaws 3 is the scene at the aquarium and Dennis Quaid. That's really all I fucking remember.
We need to talk about the ending.
But,
We've gone all over the shop. We need to talk about not so much the ending, but the build up to the ending because it's fantastic. All right, we've touched on the whole Minneapolis scene, but it's everything before and after that, which is amazing. Where they're all sat around the table, except for sorry, I said you've got Hooper and Quint sat on the table, Brody looking at them. And then they're just talking, they're just shooting the shit. This is what happened to me. This is what happened to me. This is what happened to me. The SS Minneapolis, that fucking tragedy, and they're just intense. And all of a sudden, then they start just out of the blue, like Quint smiled then when he goes, "Let me pour you a drink," and then you get the song, "Fucking love, show me the way to go home," and they're doing it and they're planning, and then
just as in danger of being fun, suddenly the fucking ship gets attacked.
But I love as well because one by one, then they stop. Quint, who's like, ear to the sea kind of thing, just stops. Hooper notices Quint notices something, so he stops. And then you've got like Brody, who just at the end just doing his little clap in. He's, oh, hang on, something's going wrong here. And then it all just the shit hits the fan, and you've got them all, and then everything. Quint, you know what to do. Let's sort around. Quint's like, well, I've exhausted all my options. Hooper, show me what your technical stuff can do. And then Hooper's
that's the thing about the second half of this film is that it's got this ability to bring you up and down. I don't want to say it's a metaphor for the waves or anything douchey like that, moving on the sea. But you have those moments where it's like all doom and gloom. And then, as I said, it's resembled in the score as well. It's like, you get the boom, 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 boom. And then all of a sudden it lifts up and suddenly you're in an adventure movie. And, Quint and Hooper at each other's necks. And all of a sudden they're doing their little stories and everything's quite fun. And then next thing you know, he's telling the US Indianapolis story. And it's fucking horrifying. The thing about a shark chief, he's got lifeless eyes, black eyes, like a doll.
Right, hang on. I've been saying Minneapolis. Is it Minneapolis or Indianapolis? Have I fucking
Indianapolis. No, it's Indianapolis. Sorry, did I say Minneapolis?
No, I've been saying Minneapolis since we started.
Oh, maybe it is the Minneapolis. Maybe I've just written it down wrong. You want to double check that because it could be one of those like spell check things. Is it Minneapolis? I think it is the Minneapolis, right?
I don't know. That's what I'm saying. I could have sworn.
You have to look it up now because we can't be fucking up the whole podcast. We at least need to get it right now so that we can move on with our lives.
I'm looking.
It's definitely not the Indianapolis.
I don't know.
Well, anyway, so he gives the speech. And it's proper harrowing stuff. But then, like you said, they start singing. The fun is back in the movie, but then the shark attacks, and that's fucking horrifying. And then Quint gets murdered in the most horrific way for a PG movie I think I've ever seen. But then that final sequence where, the smile, you son of a bitch, that is framed and executed so magnificently.
I'm really upset with myself. It's Indianapolis. I said
I've got Indianapolis. No, I checked my notes. I was like, oh, maybe I've got it wrong. And then I checked earlier. I was like, no, I've got Indianapolis twice. It is the USS Indianapolis.
I'm checking my intro now, and I've said Minneapolis. I've been saying Minneapolis since we started. What a dick.
Oh, that's the thing. Somebody's going to go through and count this and be like, Rob said Minneapolis 76 times in an hour. Absolutely insane.
But he says he's a fan of this film. What a twat.
But then one of the other things with the USS Indianapolis story is that what it does establish, and what is really at the heart of this movie is, you're scared of the shark, but you don't see the shark. What you're really scared of is the water. And fundamentally, the dark. It's what you can't see. And what it actually reminded me of was, did you ever see the movie Open Water?
Unfortunately, yes, I did.
My day. Like we've talked before about movies with grim endings, and the ones that always spring to mind are The Descent and The Mist, which we've already mentioned. Absolutely brutal ending. Rewritten like the book, the Stephen King novella, the ending is actually quite optimistic. The movie is not optimistic. I actually think Open Water has one of the most horrifyingly depressing endings of all time. Now, spoiler alert, I'm going to spoil it for you. So her husband, they get left behind by a boat. Her husband is finally eaten by a shark. He's dead. And she is left in the sea on her own with just no sign that she's going to be rescued. So the final shot is of her being surrounded by sharks. And rather than wait to be eaten, she just dunks herself underwater and drowns herself. Credits. I was like, I want to burst into tears. It was fucking horrible. I was like the ultimate be scared of the water. Now, I'm not sure if you've actually been out to sea, as it were. Like we did it during my honeymoon. Went to look for giant what are they called, manta rays or whatever they are.
Yeah.
And there is that element. Like they're like, oh, we've seen a few. And we were out enough that you can't see the land. And they're just like, oh, we'll just jump into the sea. And I didn't think about it until it was just suddenly that moment. I'm just jump into the sea. And usually you're within kind of swimming distance of the land. At this point, you're just like, all right, I'm just jumping into and there's something completely different about jumping into the sea and you are just surrounded by that blackness and you can't see the land. And all I could think about was fucking Jaws and open water. I'm like, okay, have fun. Don't freak out.
We've
This is fine.
we've done it like off the island of Rhodes when we went on our honeymoon and stuff like that. Yeah, it's it's not good. But I did
It's not.
I did scuba diving as well, which is fucking interesting.
Scuba diving is amazing.
Yeah.
It is super fun. But to bring it back to the end of the film, and again, one of those things, they don't labor the point. There's obviously numerous references to the idea that Quint is going full Captain Ahab at the end of the movie, that the shark, ostensibly, as the movie goes on, becomes his great white whale. Or is that what it's called? The white whale, whatever it is, his whale, his Moby Dick. But at the end, when, like you say, he comes in with the baseball bat, and you're like, is he going to fucking hit Roy Schneider over the head, and he destroys the radio? And when he just won't let up on the boat and just plays out until the engines go, it's like he is willing to die in that moment. He's like, it's me and the shark. I'm not letting this creature that has become almost mythical in his mind in a matter of moments. It's a classic Captain Ahab moment. But again, they don't labor the point. It's just there if you want to see it. Otherwise, it's just Quint being a fucking psycho.
I also think as well, it's more the fact that he thinks he should have died at the Indianapolis.
Yeah, he's got survivor's guilt, hasn't he?
That's it. So he should have gone down at sea. So it's the sea that's going to take him.
Yeah.
And that's where, so like, if they get rescued or anything, you've kind of stolen that away from him. Whether or not he kills the shark, like you said, it's me or the shark. Mm-hmm. But whatever happens, Quint is dying at sea. Quint is dying on his boat.
Yeah. Oh, and in this instance, at the very least, I'm dying or that shark's dying. Like, there's no way, we're both walking away from this. Yeah. One of us is fucking dying today. It obviously ends up being both of them, but yeah.
Just while it's in my head as well, did you notice the sly nod to Spielberg wanting to direct a James Bond film?
No.
The license plate they pull out of the Tiger Shark, 007.
Was it really?
Yeah.
That is very cool. Well, I'm glad he didn't in the end, because, he is one of those directors. I mean, we've mentioned it before, like, his work has arguably gone off the rails by his own incredibly high standards over the last decade, 15 years, although he's on a bit of a comeback, because I thought, I haven't seen The Fabelmans yet, but that was held in relatively high regard. And actually thought, what was the music? West Side Story, I thought was actually, I'm not a musical guy, but I thought it was a really good film. But
is he actually doing Goonies too?
I don't think so. I've not heard any. You get stuff.
Have you not? It's been released, mate. There is a Goonies 2 coming out, and I'm pretty sure it said it's coming out for 2026. And I read that it was him doing it.
I've not seen that. Like, I've seen stuff on the internet. I've not seen anything from a source I would trust on this. Okay. So I put a massive, massive question mark next to that before. I'm like, oh, this is going to happen. And I just can't see him going back and doing the Goonies. I think it's one of those rare films alongside Jaws, funny enough, where you just wouldn't remake it. So what are you going to do? A fucking Goonies sequel with 55-year-old men? Give me a fucking break. I don't want a Goonies 2. There's a Goonies 2 video game for the NES, which is quite funny, actually. But yeah, I don't want to see the movie. But his runs from 75 to 84 and arguably 93 to 05, depending on how much you like War of the Worlds in Munich, I suppose, are just unfucking believable. Especially this first run from... some people will go back to Jewel in 73 or whatever it is. And, you make arguments like Sugarland Express was a perfectly decent movie. But from Jaws right through to Indiana Jones and the Temple of Doom, it's just, he had a couple of movies which didn't land in quite the same way. But for the most part, every movie that landed was a huge cultural moment. Movies, and I know we're not the biggest fans of E.T., for instance, but it's a film that's still relevant, over 40 years later. If you want to tell us just how good Spielberg is, anyone else, if they made Jaws, you'd be like, is this the movie that Steven Spielberg's going to fundamentally be remembered for? If you go into IMDb, it's not even one of the 4 movies that he's known for. Jaws isn't one of the 4 movies he's known for. That's how good his other fucking films are. Personally, I would nudge out maybe Saving Private Ryan and stick this on there. But my fucking days, how you can make Jaws and there are at least 4 movies supposedly more famous than that? Give me a fucking break.
Yeah, but it's funny as well, because the ones he's known for, he has directed them, but they're all classes produced by him, except for Raiders Lost Ark, which is directed. I'd get rid of E.T. because it's shit, and I would put Jaws.
Yeah, but I can understand. I'm not the biggest fan of E.T., but I understand why it's there. It's
we're gonna do this again.
Important.
We're gonna do this again.
No. This is a different conversation.
If it's shit, it's shit for me. so it shouldn't be there. You can understand why people like it, but I can't.
Yeah, because I'm a normal person who has empathy and all these other things
at all.
If you can't understand why E.T. is one of his most known for films just because you think it's shit, then there's some kind of block there between you and normal society, I feel. It's just, I get it. I'm not a fan either. But it was super famous. It's still famous today. Everyone knows E.T. For whatever. I would, out of the ones that he's known for, I think I'd probably nudge Saving Private Ryan.
God, no.
No, it's a bet. I prefer it as a movie. But when I think of Steven Spielberg, I think E.T. comes to mind before Saving Private Ryan, personally. Although it's a close call. I'm splitting hairs here.
I mean, not for me. But to be fair, I wouldn't have thought of Schindler's List if I thought of Steven Spielberg.
Oh yeah. Schindler's List is like it was like that two-hander, wasn't it? Where in the same fucking year, basically, he released Schindler's List and Jurassic Park in one of like the greatest directorial years of all time. How you can something so personal, so heart-wrenching, and so fantastically directed and incredibly adult in terms of its tone and storytelling as Schindler's List, and release it on the day where you just come in and just I'm just going to reimagine summer blockbusters again. I've already done it once with Jaws. I'm going to do it again 20 years later with Jurassic Park. Fucking unbelievable. Is Jurassic Park... So what is it? Jurassic Park, Schindler's List, Saving Private Ryan, and E.T. Are those the four?
No. God, no. Jurassic Park's not on there either.
Jurassic Park? What the fuck? How could Jurassic Park not be on there? It's insane. Close Encounters?
Schindler's
Raiders.
List. Raiders, yeah.
Yeah, Raiders. Oh my God. Yeah. What would you have as your 4 then? Just out of interest. Not favorite, but when you think of Spielberg, what would your 4 be?
Raiders, Ryan, Jaws, and I can't fucking shake it.
Not Jurassic Park?
AI. Some reason I can't get AI out. I can't get AI out of my head.
I have a bit of a soft spot for AI. I actually think the first half of that film is something bordering on spectacular. I think the second half gets, when Spielberg's at his worst, he gets a bit too schmaltzy, doesn't he? He can be, kind of guilty of that. He doesn't do that in this film by any stretch of the imagination. The closest thing he does to being a little bit schmaltzy, and it's very low key, is that Hooper survives the shark attack. There's no reason for it. Not just he doesn't play any role afterwards. There's no reason that Hooper shouldn't die at the end.
He disappears under the water, and that's what I wanted to mention as well before we move on. He disappears under the water. It was like they had nothing for him to do now because they needed the one-on-one, the mano, a sharko. So it's like, you stay under the water right up until the shark explodes, and then you can pop back up and you can help him swim to shore. And it just seems a bit of a waste. They had this whole thing with Hooper, oh, what can you do with this stuff? And he said, well, I can't penetrate his skin, but if I can get him to open his mouth, then I can put it in, I can needle inside him, which sounds dirty. And then all of a sudden, the cage just melts because, I don't know, it's made of fucking tin foil or something like that. So that just gets destroyed. And he just disappears. And yeah, you see, because even to the point where he pops up and he goes, Quint? No, Quint's not coming back.
I guess the idea is that Quint is a bit of a shithouse and you've just had this really dramatic, gross death. You would be almost doubling down if the shark got into the cage and just tore Hooper limb from limb. I think the idea is that Hooper's just a bit too nice. And again, that whole idea of it being in the book, he cheats on Brody's wife, so he's a shithouse, so he can be killed in the book. But in this, he's a bit too nice for the audience to really go with, my God, you're going to kill Hooper too? So I think that's probably the reason for it is, the whole idea of well, he's a nice guy, so we can't have him torn to shreds by a shark, which I think is actually fair enough. It's just strange because, as you mentioned afterwards, he doesn't have anything to do. But that showdown with, again, we've not even mentioned the most famous quote in the most famous one-liner, you're going to need a bigger boat. It's not a famous quote because that's short. But he even has another one at the end, the, smile, you son of a bitch line. In any other film, that's the most famous line. In this, it's relegated to 3rd or 4th, which is crazy. But that whole sequence, I never appreciated just how wonderfully it's put together, where the shark comes back around, the boat is still sinking, and you get the sun in the background, and it's obviously I can't remember the bow of the boat, wherever it is, it's just about to fall underwater, and he's leaning on there, and it's this race against time where the boat's fucking sinking, the shark's coming for him, and he's just looking for that one shot. You get that amazing catharsis of that line, and the shark blowing up, and I'm just like, what a fucking ending to this movie. What a movie.
like even to the point where when they're swimming and they're swimming towards the sunset and they're like, "What
Mhm.
day is it? Oh, it's Tuesday. I think the tide's with us." And
Yeah,
just keep kicking. And then Brody just says, "I used to be scared of the water. I can't see why."
yeah.
Like just a great,
Charming to the very end.
yeah, absolutely. Speaking of very end, should we move on?
Yeah, favorite scene. I'll go first because it's going to be easy. I mean, we mentioned it a bunch of times. It's the monologue, the Indianapolis USS Indianapolis monologue. Shaw absolutely slays it, and it's not just the monologue in and of itself, as we've mentioned numerous times. It's the build up to it. It's everything that goes around it. It's those trio of characters you've just grown to love throughout this movie, and the fact that they're bonding in front of you, and then you just get this truly horrifying story, which reminds you of just how horrendous sharks in the sea can be. So that is my favorite scene.
It's a fantastic scene, and it would be my favorite scene, but I kind of knew you were going to go with it, so
Mhm.
I wanted to go somewhere else.
Mhm.
So for me, it's the second introduction of Quint when Quint and Hooper meet, where Quint's walking around his weird shack with all the shark jaws. He's got one shark jaw boiling. He's giving what was his name, Brody, some moonshine. Going, I made it
Mhm.
myself. And Brody goes to Hooper, don't drink that.
Mhm.
And then
Yeah.
you got all the thing, and then they get to the boat and they're packing everything up, and he starts going on about shark cages. Then he starts singing about Spanish ladies.
Mhm.
Then Mrs. Brody rocks up, and he's like, "Come on, we gotta go!" Like, and everything about that scene is fun because it feels
It really is
manic.
brilliant. Yeah,
It
it's
feels man.
fantastic, and it's not just that. We mentioned it earlier in the podcast, but that is the introduction to the second half of the movie, and what I think most people remember when they think of this film. Don't get me wrong;
Yeah,
the first half is fantastic. It's a bit slower paced, despite the fact that it is, as you mentioned, quite manic. But you need that build up for the second half to feel so important. And
yeah.
it really starts with Quint showing up, like you say. You have that sequence, and then they're off on the boat. But yeah, you absolutely need that sequence. It's absolutely essential for the
But
rest of the movie to work.
it felt like a one shot as well, didn't it?
Mhm. It
Like it
did.
all just felt like a one shot. Bless him as well. I just realized Robert Shaw died 3 years after this.
Yeah, yeah, it wasn't long after
Yeah.
at all. I mean, he looked like one of those guys that wasn't going to live to 80. He looked like he'd lived to the max, to say
Dude,
the
he
least.
looked like he was fucking 80.
Yeah, he does. He does. He's just one of the, yeah, but he always looked he's one of those guys who probably looked 60 when he was 20. He just
Yeah.
has that look about him. Loves and hates. Do you want to go first for loves?
Yeah, I'm gonna Quint. I
Mhm.
think I think Quint needs to stand alone on his own. I think he's great, especially in the second half, as we've said. Well, basically, you see him right at the beginning. You all know me. I'm the one who's going to kill that shark for you, but it'll cost you 10 grand. I don't want help. But then all of a
Mhm.
sudden he disappears for like another 40 minutes until he
Yeah,
pops
yeah.
back up and they go and pay. So the second introduction, but I think Quint is great. And then I want to
Mhm.
put Quint again with Brody and the core cast, the three main
Yeah,
guys
yeah, the
together.
three. Yeah, yeah.
Fucking brilliant. And
You see them all on the poster as well. Like they even have it. Like Shaw actually gets sneakily top billing because none of these
yeah,
guys were massively famous. Like he was coming off the Sting, so he had a bit of a name. But when you look at the names who were actually potential, when they were talking about casting this film, Spielberg just kept saying, I think like Charlton Heston was up at one point, and Duvall was talking about actually playing Quint, but they were just like, this film needs to be about the shark. It needs to be about the sea. If we have one of these characters that are too big, they need to be everyman, which is weird because he kind of fell back on the everyman as being Tom Hanks, one of the most famous people in the world. But obviously for this, it was just like, no, he's too much of a traditional movie star. We need people who everyone isn't just going, oh, that's that guy. So they
yeah.
can actually put themselves in that place.
And my third is the use or the lack of use of the shark.
Yeah, yeah.
Like you just to have the feel of there's something out there, but you don't know
Mm-hmm.
where it is. And there's just these little instances, like the boat gets rocked, or
Mm-hmm.
a piece of wood cracks, or something like that. I think it's fantastic.
Oh yeah, yeah, absolutely makes the film.
Yeah,
Number one, it's a horror movie masquerading as a tentpole summer blockbuster, and the fact that it was PG is absolutely sublime. Two, the ultimate example of, and it's basically taking your point now, necessity being the mother of invention. The whole less is more, like all good horror movies. Number three, brilliant male chemistry. Just put dudes on a boat. But even amongst them, even though they're all essential, I've got down here, Shaw is undoubtedly the MVP, which isn't criticizing Dreyfus or Schneider. It's just, he's just something else in this film.
yeah.
And I guess for the direction and stuff, it's just really good, isn't it? Hates, this was tricky for me. This was really
Yeah,
tricky.
it was a bit tough for me as well. So I've actually gone down the Liam route, right? The most tenuous of tenuous ever.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
Like and I'm gonna do this because it's one of my. I used to attack you all the time for this. I hate the fact this led to those sequels.
Yeah, it really should have just been Jaws, shouldn't it? It really
Yeah,
just yeah. There's no. I mentioned the fact that Jaws 2 is actually fine in and of itself, but I think we'd all be happy if it just stood alone.
yeah. I hate the fact that Quint didn't put his tooth back in after. Like he took his tooth out and it just again, and it just
Put
he
your
didn't.
fucking tooth back
I
in.
don't understand why you didn't put it back in. You just left him put it in your pocket. Like it was really weird. And because I hate wine, I hate the fact that Brody drank a pint of wine.
It's a lot of wine. I'm not a wine drinker, but Jesus Christ, that is a lot of goddamn wine. But he was stressed. What can you say? Hey, this is weird because I'm saying it feels slightly slow by modern standards, the first half. But then I'm like, what do you do? Do you lose the scenes with Brody and his son, the dinner scene with Hooper and Ellen? I'm just like, that's the Spielberg magic. So I'm actually saying that as one of my hates, despite the fact that I kind of love it. So yeah, my list is completely bullshit. As a more genuine one, as much as I love the ending, the closing credits actually feel really old-fashioned in a way that the rest of the movie doesn't. So after you get them swimming off and they cut to the credits, it has that old school, almost looks like a 50s movie. You get a shot of the coastline, and it just looks like suddenly looks like a really, really old-fashioned movie, and I just didn't like that with the music and stuff. Even the music choice wasn't fantastic, despite the fact for the rest of the movie, it's absolutely spot on. And number 3, I know it's like, an island town in, Massachusetts and stuff, but they really do play up the idea of everyone in Almaty being a dumb hick. It's like earlier in the film, it's like, a tiger shark? What the hell is a tiger shark? A great wall, we don't know what you big city folk. It's like, I don't think that these people are that fucking dumb. They live by the water. I think they know what a shark is, for fuck's sake. So those are my 3 hates. As you say, tenuous at best, except for the closing credits, which I stand by. I don't like it at all. Any alternative titles for this film? There shouldn't be, but I'm sure there are.
Yes and no. I mean, I don't know if I want to do them really because it's Jaws or Shark.
Like, yeah, of course it is. Of course. Yeah. Okay, I mean, is there do any stand out at all?
So Denmark, Jaws of Death.
Yeah, this is what I thought we were going to get.
Yeah. Hungary, the Shark. Iceland, the Monster.
No, that's the Monster. Come on.
Netherlands, the Summer of the White Shark.
Okay, they're going for it a bit. They're in fairness.
Yeah. The working title for the US was Stillness in the Water.
That's not too bad, but it sounds like a different kind of horror film. It sounds like the kind of horror film that stars Harrison Ford and Julia Roberts for some reason.
Yes. Harrison Ford and Michelle Pfeiffer. What was that?
That was the one.
Yeah.
What the hell was it called? I've seen that film a bunch of times as well. Did Robert Zemeckis direct that? I'll look it up now.
And the other one, Vietnam didn't know what to go with, so they went with Shark Jaws.
Oh, that's kind of good, actually.
Right. While you're looking at it, then I'll just jump straight into facts instead of you.
What lies beneath? What lies beneath?
What lies beneath? So yeah, what lies beneath? That's probably why we went with water. Then was it?
Sorry, I was looking up who directed What Lies Beneath to see if I was making up the whole.
Robert Zemeckis.
It was Robert Zemeckis. So I knew everything about that film except for the fucking title. Unbelievable. So those alternative titles. I'm sure there are a billion and one fucking facts about this movie. So you are going to have to be selective. Otherwise, this is going to be a 3-hour podcast.
So several decades after the film's release, Lee Fierro walked into a seafood restaurant and noticed an Alex Kintner sandwich on the menu. She commented that she had played his mother many years ago. Jeffrey Voorhees, manager of the restaurant, ran out to meet her. He had played her son, and they hadn't seen each other since the original movie shoot.
That is a lovely story. I hope it's true. Yeah. I would love to have a sandwich named after me. There was actually a Liam sandwich in there was a bar called Lebowski's in Edinburgh. It's closed down now, but they had sandwiches and drinks named after all the characters. And there was a very, very minor character who bowls with Jesus in The Big Lebowski called Liam for some reason. So there was a Liam in there. So
was it a very large sandwich, like 16 slices of bread?
It should have been, shouldn't it? But sadly, it was based on the character in the film rather than the very tall Welshman who does this podcast.
When composer John Williams originally played the score for director Steven Spielberg.
What did you just say?
When composer John Williams originally played the score.
Honestly, I heard Wanker Posey. I don't
What?
know why. I just heard wanker. I was like, did you just say wanker posy? I don't even know what that means. Sorry, I do apologize.
As a, it's like
I should have known that. I was like, I should have just let it go and been like, he didn't say wanker posy. There's no reason for him to say wanker posy. There's no such term as wanker posy.
it's like, well, when we did Hard Target and we ended up going John Woovie. It was a John
John
Woovie.
Woover, yeah.
Yeah.
Or that time where we kept calling the USS Indianapolis the USS Minneapolis. It happens. These things happen.
Yeah, fuck you know. Right. Wanker Posey John Williams originally played the score for director Steven Spielberg. Spielberg laughed and said, "That's funny, John, really, but what did you really have in mind for the theme of Jaws?" Spielberg later stated that without Williams' score, the movie would have only been half as successful, and according to Williams, it jump-started his career.
Oh, 100%. The score is absolutely essential. And as I said, there's more to this score than you think. Like everyone remembers the bum 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 bum, but it keeps the tone, that up and down, that kind of like levity horror. It all comes through in the score.
Yeah.
But yeah, of course, the main theme is what we're all thinking about, really.
According to writer Carl Gottlieb, Roy Scheider ad-libbed the line, "You're going to need a bigger boat." I think we knew that anyway.
He says it twice, actually. I didn't realize that.
Does he? Only you do
Yeah,
once.
he says you're going to need a bigger boat, and then a few seconds later, when they're all like funny around, just like, "Wait, guys, you're going to need a bigger boat." Like, it's basically the whole like, "No, really, we have to go back to land. We can't fight the shark with this little piece of shit boat."
Fuck the boat. You're going to try to catch the shark with a with a fishing rod.
I mean, yeah, they're just not equipped for it, are they? Let's be honest.
Bruce the Shark has 4 minutes of screen time. I know he said.
I mean, but when he does, Jesus Christ, when he suddenly jumps up on the ship, like it should be ridiculous, but because you've waited so long to see the shark, when it does, you're like, it looks awesome, and you're like, oh, does that look silly? It doesn't look silly when it's biting Quint in half. I'll tell you that much.
So Spielberg named the shark Bruce after his lawyer. Again, probably one that people already knew anyway, but I'll chuck that in there. Three mechanical Bruces were made, each with specialized functions. One shark was open on the right side, one was open on the left side, and the third was fully skinned. Each shark cost approximately $250,000.
Jeez Louise. It is interesting, actually, because I'd never noticed it before that. Because initially, before they started building sharks, the idea was that they were going to train a shark, but they just couldn't get the shark to do what they wanted. But there are sequences, specifically when Hooper goes under the water in the cage. There's a sequence where they're just filming a shark. It's just a shark fucking up the cage. That's not a mechanical shark. It's just a shark. But yeah, obviously they just couldn't get enough footage with them.
The average summer tourist population of Martha's Vineyard before the film was released was approximately 5,000 people. After it came out, the population skyrocketed to 15,000.
Brilliant.
Director Steven Spielberg played first clarinet for the beach scene.
Oh, there we go.
Yep. Despite the film's mammoth box office returns, Robert Shaw did not earn a penny out of it. He was facing heat from the IRS for tax evasion, and due to working in countries as diverse as the US, Canada, and Ireland, he had to forego his salary to make amends.
Yeah, and that's one of the things we have mentioned. The initial budget for this film was actually 3.5 million. And one of the issues it was going to be seen as this big flop was that it supposedly skyrocketed, and I'm doing the bunny ears here, to 9 million. It ends up making $476 million and was the biggest financial success in movie history until ding, 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 2 years later, Star Wars came out. But that was another reason why it's seen as the summer blockbuster, because no film would come close to that. They're just like, this film has made so much money. How has this happened? And obviously, it changed the movie industry forever. In the long run, people would say negatively, but certainly in a positive way back in 1975.
When Roy Scheider was trapped in the sinking Orca, it took 75 takes to get the shot right. Scheider did not trust the special effects team to rescue him in case of an emergency, so he hid axes and hatchets around the cabin just in case.
Fair enough.
I mean, I'd love it as he's walking up to the scene. What's in that bag? Why is it clinking? Oh, no, it's
nothing,
fine. It's fine.
nothing.
Yeah,
nothing. You do trust us, though, don't you? Yeah. I trust you guys. I know you're going to be professional. You're going to do your job. I just always carry around a bag of axes. It's just one of my things.
Last one, because like I said, we could go on this for days. So Mythbusters dedicated a special episode to testing whether or not certain things from this film are plausible. Mm-hmm. It concluded that piano wire does not have the tensile strength needed to be used as an adequate shark catching line. Mm-hmm. Scuba tanks will not explode when shot. A great white shark.
I was really disappointed when I saw that episode, and I was like, "Come on, man! Everybody wanted that fucking tank to explode."
A great white shark can ram a dive cage with enough force to damage or destroy it. A great white shark has enough power to punch a hole in the side of a wooden boat under the right circumstances, but an example of this happening has never been documented. A shark's maximum striking force is great enough to pull the barrels under, but the force a shark can generate in a continuous pull is insufficient to keep the barrels underwater for a significant amount of time.
They do kind of hint, though, throughout that this is an almost mythical shark, like, you know,
Yeah.
which comes through on the whole Quint thing and the whole Captain Ahab thing. It's like, you know, he is the way he reacts is just like, no, the shark shouldn't be able to do this. It's too smart. It's too strong. They're, you know, they never go overboard, which is cool. They always kind of keep it just the right side of, we will say, quote unquote,
Meg.
because we're not shark specialists. But there are hints that this is some kind of like almost supernatural shark, which is hinted at, but it never goes over that line.
Until you get to Jaws of Revenge, where it actually
Of course,
has it has a hit list of people in
I'm taking out all you motherfucker. I don't know why the shark is black in Jaws 4 in my head. All you motherfuckers.
It's Samuel L. Jackson. This is Samuel L. Jackson. Fucking hell. A shark cannot generate.
This your boy, both of y'all getting fucked up. Sorry, I'm gonna stop now.
Jesus, you are getting out of hand. A shark cannot generate enough force to pull a boat backwards with great enough speed that waves break over the stern. And finally, punching a shark in the nose, eyes, or gills will cause it to flee or at least back off briefly.
Yeah.
Still, I don't know if I want to punch a shark.
No, I don't, but I guess he's in that position where if you're in the cage and it's just going for you, you know, he stabbed him a few times. I guess you would just naturally lash out. I never want to be in a position where I have to punch a shark, but, you know, I'd give it the old college try if forced into that situation, I like to think. Yep. In terms of Hug to the Future, so that's where we ask the question, remake, sequels, Let It Die, or Leave Well Alone. The correct answer is Leave Well Alone. In and of itself, this is one of the few movies I mentioned earlier that feels sacred alongside Back to the Future, like The Goonies, as we mentioned, where you're like, you literally can't remake this film. It does, however, have sequels, and as we already mentioned, they are of diminishing returns, so we won't go into that. But yes, Leave Well Alone, I would say.
Yep, same for me. It's just leave it alone. It's pretty much perfect, and you don't need to make this better or make this today. Just if you want to watch Jaws, but just
nobody needs a 2024 PG version of Jaws now. It would be
that's
very, very depressing.
That's called the Meg.
That is called the Meg, and we do not need any more Meg. Thank you very much. Make change. So this is where you can, if you could only make one change this movie to make it better. For me, you could make an argument, and I know some people who aren't so enamored by this film would argue that the first half in particular could do with speeding up. Upon rewatching it, I actually completely disagree. So my only real issue with this film is that I think it needs better closing credits, or at least less, you know, they just, like I said, it was the only thing in the film where it just suddenly jumped out at me. I was like, my God, that just looks old as shit. So yes, a bizarre thing to say, but if I was going to change anything about this movie, it'd be the closing credits.
For me, it would decide what you want to do with Hooper. Either kill him or make him, or have him at least help towards the end of the show. He's done everything up to this point, so he either has a dramatic death. I know we've already had Quint, which is great, but you can have another one, that's fine. So have a dramatic death, or have him at least say the tank, Brody the tank. Something, you know, just give Hooper something more than just disappear underwater right up until the shark explodes and he just pops up and goes, oh, it's like, do you know, it's like that one person whose turn it is to buy a round and he goes to the fucking toilet.
100%.
And he comes back and he goes, oh, I'll get the next one.
Oh, the moment they hear the little bell, as if, they closed the bar. Oh, you've already bought a round. Oh, cheers, mate. No, I was just at the loop, just one of those things.
Yeah.
It is strange. It's not like totally egregious, but as you say, it almost feels pointless that, like, why does he survive unless he's going to do something? So, yeah, that's probably better than my answer of the closing credits. In terms of video games, surprisingly, yes, I think there were like 6 in all. The 2 of note, though, were the NES game by Atlas, developed in Japan in 1987, and Jaws Unleashed by Appaloosa, I think it was Appaloosa Interactive in 2006 for the PS2 and the Xbox. Both somewhat middling. I think the NES is closer to the movies because you actually play, you know, humans and you get to go underwater, you're back on the boat. Whereas Jaws Unleashed is one of those silly games. Yes, it has the name, but you actually play the shark. So it's arguably closer to something like Jaws 2 or Jaws the Revenge, where you're taking your vengeance on the people of Amity Islands. They're both whatever. I guess if you're going to do instead, I would say first and foremost, don't make a shark game. Don't have you control the shark. Make it like a boat management game. Or if you want to go in a completely different direction, you could have it a game based on you playing as the mayor, Mayor Vaughn, and as you run Almaty and you kind of wager the income of the island against shark fatalities. So it becomes like a moral kind of quandary game. But let's be honest, the correct answer is probably Dave the Diver crossover by Mint Rocket. So that's what I'd really go with. Something which combines kind of going into the sea, boat management, characterizations, all that jazz. So I'll go with a Dave the Diver spin-off or DLC.
Well, originally I was going to say we could have it like Manita, where you play the shark.
Which is just Jaws, is literally Jaws Unleashed.
Yeah. But I actually didn't think, I had an idea of what I would like to see, but not a studio or like this game or anything that I'd want to. So basically, I would like it as where you're on a boat trying to survive while the boat is sinking because the shark has attacked it. And what do you do to keep the boat afloat, to keep it moving, to distract the shark, things like that. So yeah, but
there's actually a game, and I can't remember it off the top of my head, but it was one of those kind of like local multiplayer games where you're on a spaceship and four of you play at once, and the idea is that different things go wrong on the spaceship. So you can all see the screen at the same time, but obviously you can only be at one place at a time. And you've got to manage it with your friends, like on the sofa, where it's like, oh, this part of the ship's fucked, so you've got to go over there and fix that. So it would actually work if it was like a 3-player multiplayer game, and you have to combine fixing the ship while also fending off the shark. And you have to kind of and different characters have different skill sets. So you have to keep jumping back and forth. Oh, no, you have to do this now. I have to go back. It's just a shame I can't remember the name of the game, which is a shame because I actually played it. It was quite good. But anyway, moving on. Scores and recommendations. I feel like we've had this one in the post for a while, haven't we? It's a 5 and a yes for me. It's on Netflix. It's on Sky. If you've probably seen it before, if you're listening to this podcast, but I would genuinely say if you haven't seen this film for a long time, go back and rewatch it because it's absolutely fantastic. And while I cheaped out, and because I thought, if we're going to do Jaws, this is going to be my excuse to go out and buy the much vaunted 4K. The 4K transfer of this film is supposed to be absolutely phenomenal, but it was just sitting there on both Sky and Netflix. I'm just like, fuck it, I'm just going to watch it in HD. But if you're looking for a genuine excuse to rewatch this, go out and buy the 4K. But if not, it's there, it's on Netflix, it still looks great. It's probably even better than you remember. Go back and revisit it.
That's what I was going to say. I'd argue the HD conversion was fine.
Oh, it was good. It was good.
Yeah, it was absolutely. I had no issues with it whatsoever.
The reason I've become somewhat obsessed was because of a podcast we did a couple of months ago, probably longer than that.
The Mad Max one.
We did. Road Warrior. I'd heard that the 4K transfer for that was really good. And as I said at the time, it was genuinely transformative. It was properly like, I can't believe how good this film looks. And now I'm like, is Jaws going to be that fucking good? So I've kind of become obsessed with it. So
are you struggling with this one?
I am, yeah. I keep having to move because it's moved around. I pulled the curtain, but now it's just shining directly into my eyeballs. So yeah, my apologies. Sorry, we're doing this podcast, and obviously he can see me, and I just keep shifting my ass around the room. It must be very distracting.
It was a bit then, right, where you were trying to get like a band of shadow around you, so you looked like Zorro. We set a mask around your eyes.
White ass Zorro, unbelievable. So yeah, 5 and yes across the board. It's
same with me. 5 and yes. I mean, I didn't know if I've been wanting to revisit this film for ages.
I wasn't convinced it was going to be a 5. I knew I was going to like it, but I was not convinced it'd be a 5.
And I remember liking it, but I don't remember liking it as much as I've liked it now. Same. But going back to it, fucking hell, yeah, absolutely. 5.
I remember like 45 minutes in, I was like, man, this film's just good. And then when Quinn showed up, I was like, no, this film's really fucking good. Yeah.
Yeah.
So that's been 1975's Jaws, the earliest movie we've ever done, and only I think the second 70s movie after Superman the movie.
Shit, that was 79, wasn't it?
Yeah, I think that's the only other 70s film we've done. So yeah, the earliest one by quite a stretch. Next week, well, I haven't been able to make up my mind. So in the first instance, you have a choice between 3 years. So there is 1996, 1983, or 2005.
Oh Jesus. I mean, 83 is my birth year, so that's a good year. 2005 is intriguing, though, because we haven't gone that late for a while, or early, as it were. And what was the other? 96?
1996.
Oh. If I don't like the film, can I choose another year?
Yeah, sure. We're going to end up doing all 3 of these anyway, so it's fine.
Oh, fuck it. Go 2005.
Go 2005. Okay, so 2005, I'm not sure if the director is going to help. Francis Lawrence.
Move on.
Okay, I'm not giving you the star. I'm going to give you one of the other people in the film, Shia LaBeouf.
Shia LaBeouf is not the star.
He's not the star, but he's in it.
Yeah. Does he have to be?
I actually think he's quite good in this. I'm actually a bit of a Shia LaBeouf apologist, but I'm one of those fucking guys.
Bear will be a Transformers. No, it was 2007. So what did he do
2007,
before?
yeah.
2007. No.
I'll give you one more hint. We talked about it earlier as to whether next week was going to be the start of our Hugtober season.
Is this Disturbia?
Kind of is going to be now.
Is it Disturbia?
No, that was that was another good film, the Rear Window remake, wasn't it?
Yeah. Actually, I like that one with him in it.
Yeah, me too. I thought it was quite good.
So
I think actually Shia LaBeouf might be a fucking asshole, but I actually think he's quite a compelling screen presence.
So it's the start of our horror Hugtober season. So it's a horror film with Shia LaBeouf in from 2005.
When I say horror film, think kind of big budget, glossy horror film.
Yeah, okay. Dude, I'm at a loss.
Okay, I'm going to give you the star. This is the last one. Keanu Reeves.
Oh, fucking hell. Okay, yeah, Constantine,
yes.
Jesus Christ, I forgot he was Chaz in it, wasn't he? The taxi driver. Of course
yeah. His little buddy. It's one of those films. Not only have I not seen for a long time, but I was horrified to see that that film is nearly 20 years old. It came out in 2005, as we mentioned there, which I just can't get my head around. It's one of those films I always liked quite a lot, and I never quite understood the backlash. I know some people are upset because he wasn't blonde and a scouser, but I was just like, Keanu Reeves is fucking cool in this film. It's got an interesting character. I mean, he's fucking got Gavin Rossdale in it from Bush, for heaven's sake. But it's one of those films, I always remember really liking it, but I haven't seen it for ages. And it's still on Amazon Prime for the next, I think, 13 days. So I was just like, all right, if we're going to do fucking Constantine, Halloween's coming up. It's still on Amazon Prime for 13 days. So if you do fancy watching it with us ahead of the podcast, it's there. It's there to be watched if you have Amazon Prime. But I think it's an interesting one.
By the time this comes out, you've got like 4 days left to watch it. So get to watching it.
Yeah, that's a good point. Yeah, so you'll only have a few days, but it's still on Amazon Prime. So if you want to watch it before the podcast, it is there. But yeah, it's just one of those films I remember liking, and I'm very interested to see if it holds up because I know, it's not that old, but it's still the best part of 20 years old, which is crazy.
Yeah.
So this has been Jaws. Next week, Constantine. What a bizarre jump! That's what
fucking Hackers, Jaws to Constantine. It's a literally. Yeah,
there's no rhyme or reason. Although there will be, as we mentioned, over the next few weeks. So we were umming as to whether next week was going to be the start of our Hugtober season of Halloween podcasts. It is now, so we're going to have like 5, I think, which is fine because I have a whole bunch of horror films, or at least horror-related, I want to watch. So please do join us for the start of our Halloween season of podcasts. Do you have anything else to add before we wrap this up?
No, I'm all good this week, mate. Thank you very much.
Okay, I've been Liam. He's been Rob, and you have been listening to the Hey You Guys podcast. Cheers, guys. Bye-bye.
Cheers, guys. Bye now.
Oh, and before I forget, where can folk reach us if they were so inclined to?
Well, you can actually reach us on Hey You Guys 80s at Facebook, Instagram, and on Twitter. But if you want to send us a mail, do heyyouguys80s@gmail.com. Send us in your recommendations. Send us in your thoughts about any of the episodes. Just literally talk to us. We'll have a one-sided talk with you on the podcast.
Yeah. We're nice folk. Get in touch. But no, cheers, guys. Bye-bye.
Cheers, guys. Bye now.